Hey guys, it's your girl Stricelyn. I'm back here to the Overcoming channel. Thanks for joining us. Listen, I'm going to be quite frank with you. We're talking about a very sensitive subject today. We're going to be talking about same-sex attraction, homosexuality. Everybody's going to have a different opinion about this, but we just want you to know this is all in love. It's a good friend of mine that's coming on set today to share his story, and I appreciate it so much. I think you're going to have something that you can take from this session today with Eddie sharing his story about same-sex attraction. Hey.
Hi.
Oh, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Excited to be here.
I'm glad that you came.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, you're always one of my favorite people. We always talk about that.
I never knew what to say to that. That's very sweet.
You can say, I'm one of your favorite people, too.
That seems a little forced.
Yeah.
It's like when someone says, I love you, and you feel like you have to say it back.
But I feel like it's okay if you say, I love you, to say, I love you back.
Gotcha. You're one of my favorite people, Stricelyn, and I love you. You feel better?
I feel so much better right now.
Okay, good.
Oh, man. Are you feeling, like, nervous or any kind of way about the interview?
Not really.
Today? No?
I'll probably feel nervous whenever I see it.
When you see it,
Yeah.
you'll be like, I can't believe this is going out into the world. But you've written a book. You've told other people this story. So
Yeah.
what do you think will be different about putting it on YouTube?
I think with a video that you can share it a lot easier, via Facebook or social media. Mm-hmm. Where my book is actually published under a pseudonym, partly to protect my family members that had asked me to publish it under a pseudonym. And then also whenever it's a video, I think that it's a little bit easier to people to pinpoint certain things that they might think are negative or to combat you with. So just thinking through that.
Yeah. How's your family going to feel about you doing a pseudonym, a non-pseudonym video?
I think they'll be fine with it. I think that my sister is still living in a same-sex relationship, or she recently ended one. And so I just try to be sensitive to her because that's her choice, and I think we both respect each other. So, but yeah, that's always a little bit sensitive in our family.
Now, I actually wanted your dad to do the interview today. I thought that would be one of the closest people to you to help tell this story. But we'll talk maybe a little bit later about why you didn't choose him and why I'm here to help tell the story. So a lot of folks may not know the story, just yet, and I know we're kind of talking around it. It was interesting to me, though. We've been friends for about, I think, 8 years, I would say.
At least.
Now. We probably met about 10 years ago and then became really good friends. And it was about 3 years ago that we went out to dinner and you shared with me what was going on in your life.
Yeah.
So you said 30 is when you started to get counseling.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that you felt for how long?
Probably since I was 12. That's when I first started feeling the feelings. I worked for a horse ranch in the small town of Sanger, and my employer was this really nice guy, and I was really wanting male affirmation and attention. And to me, he was everything that a man should be, everything that a father should be. He was real rugged. He would rope these horses, and if one of them reared up at his face, he would just hit it and say, no, and then the horse would calm down. I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then somewhere along I literally was working for him a year at 12 years old in the summer, but I was actually in homeschool, and he would often come to the door without his clothes on. And I just thought, well, that's weird, but I didn't know. As a kid, you don't know what adults do and what they shouldn't be doing. And now when I look back, I think, man, that was just really crazy that he would do that. And he also put out Playboy magazines and Penthouse magazines on the patio, and they were always stacked with this stuff that was supposed to be thrown away or burned. And so I thought, is he giving me this because he wants me to see it? So there was a lot of confusion there. And of course, like any guy, I'm looking through this stuff, and this is my first, I'm first time to ever review this type of material, and so I'm scared, and I end up burning a lot of it. And so I would sometimes walk home. It was about a 2 mile walk. Sometimes I'd walk home from the ranch. And as I'd walk home, I would see these magazines or video cases that had pornographic stuff on the backs. And I remember that one time I found one that just had men in it, and then I found them more attractive than the ones that had the women in there. And suddenly I didn't feel like I measured up. And since I had two sisters and a mother that really loved on me, I always felt just desperate for his attention and his affection. I remember just doing stuff in the front yard, thinking, I hope he sees me. I hope that I'm good enough. And never really feeling that way. Even to this day, I still don't think that he ever really sees me. And I don't necessarily feel that that's like a super huge negative anymore, because I understand him better and I understand why that there's a disconnect there. But so seeing him as being extremely masculine and not measuring up, and then being super sensitive myself, all of my guy friends, I always felt like somehow I was different. I'd been bullied. And so by the time I was 12, I was just thinking that I was not manly at all. I often had people ask me, are you a boy or a girl? And women doted on me and said, you're so sweet and you're so pretty and all these things. I never felt that I was one of the guys. And that's what I always wanted to, that's what I always longed for.
So you and I talked off camera about homosexuality, being born with it, not being born with it, and some of the conversations you've had. And one might assume that the relationship with your dad might be an influence on the same-sex attraction that you have. What do you feel about that?
I believe in my life that it's about 80%, that if my relationship with both my dads had been better, that I would have had a much less likely chance of struggling in this area.
Why?
Being a sensitive person that needed that affirmation from my dads, one of them at least, I wasn't getting it. And so I started feeling those feelings of inadequacy. So what, on some levels, somebody might have felt as a little bit of rejection. I felt like a giant amount of rejection. And so what, for some guys might have felt like, hey, I'm spending time with my dad because we're side by side playing football or mowing the lawn. I had to have eye-to-eye face contact. That's the way that I receive attention and affection all that time with my sisters. And so I never felt like in men's eyes that I measured up. And so whenever the first opportunity for attraction came in puberty, I'm suddenly so hungry for attention from men that I'm suddenly sexualizing it, because that is the way that I think, well, maybe this is some way that I can please them, and that my desire for them has become so strong. For women, I had never had a problem with women being happy around me, about pleasing them. Women delighted in me. So I was just desperate for a man to like me. Was chatting with this guy who was older. I was always attracted to older men, and they oftentimes had beards because my dad had a beard. And, in the homosexual culture, or I don't know what you'd call it, but there's definitely different groups and subcultures and categories of guys that are attracted to these very specific things. I think that alone says a lot about how we're made and how these things that we find are absent in ourselves, that oftentimes we're longing to find them in other things. And so in my book, right before I go to the counselor, I'm at a tipping point. I am manic of, okay, we are going to give in to this sin, because I had been chatting with these guys, and this one particular guy kept saying he wanted to meet with me. So finally I said, yes, I'll meet with you. I'll meet with you in this hotel in Ennis. I thought it was just outside of the realm of my world. And he didn't ever respond. And so later I came to my senses, and he was like, sorry, I wasn't around when I didn't see your message. And then I ended up just deleting the account right after that, and realizing how close I was. And not to put down anybody that has had multiple sexual partners, that's not what I'm trying to do. But I'd asked him, he was married, and I said, how many guys have you been with and girls outside of your marriage? And he said 26. And to me, that was a pretty significant thing, because I had been saving myself for marriage. I've been saving myself for somebody special. And to give all that to somebody who was not saving themselves and was just going around giving themselves to all these other people, to me, I said, I just can't do that. That just doesn't seem right. And I know that whenever I do get married, that's something that I'd love to give my wife for a wedding gift. That you can't replace that. I'd love to be able to say, hey, I waited and it was really hard. But I did this for you.
I appreciate you being honest, because I asked the question earlier, how else has this come out? How has it manifested itself? What's the addiction? And you were like, no, just my thought life, and as you continue to speak, you were honest. You're like, no, it's masturbation. It's chat rooms. It's almost meeting in person with this guy and being a notch on his belt, for all intents and purposes. But then realizing it's a moment of gratification, and then that's it, it's gone. And it sounds like what you're looking for is more long lasting than that. I do find it interesting that when you talk about the future, you talk about being married to a woman. You don't talk about being married to a man, or that the laws would change, or that's what you don't talk about wanting that for your future. Is that a cover up, or is that genuine?
That's a good question, because it's definitely very genuine. Even as a little boy, I always wanted to be married. I always wanted to be a dad. I've even looked into single adoption. I've always wanted kids. I always wanted to have my own kids, like many people. Just I remember when I was around my dad after being gone from him for 10 years, and then getting back together with him, and we have the same laugh and some of the exact same mannerisms, even though in the span of my life I've been around him like this much.
This is your real dad.
I've never felt like my attraction to men was anything more than lust. I never wanted anything more than to be affirmed by a man saying that I was good enough. So I'd like to be married and have kids, and have a wife that supports me and that says, hey, you can talk to me when you're struggling. We're going to get through this, and hopefully one day we will. But I've always felt that we've had just a disconnect, and I don't know I don't know how to fix that, because my other relationships are so easy. I don't feel that I'm a hard person to talk to or get along with or share information with. It's just a conversation. It doesn't have to be a list of what you recently accomplished or what I should know that you've just recently found out. It's just, how was your day? Who are you dating? How's your struggle? How's your life? Are you happy? Just...
The next person that I want you to talk to is the person out there that's in the same position as you are. How do you encourage them?
I would say, if you don't have a very strong support group, then this struggle would be very difficult to live with on day to day. And for me, the intimacy that I have in my home group and in the people that are in my lives, I think has been very beneficial in allowing me to continue moving forward and not giving in. It really helps whenever I see the faces of the people's lives around me that have been speaking truth and loving on me and encouraging me. I remind myself that they are there. If I didn't have that, there was nobody there saying, "Oh man, we're rooting for you, Eddie. I need people to be rooting for me." You're gonna get me crying again. I don't even know why. But yeah, and I would say that these tears are more happy tears because of those people in my lives are amazing and have been so good. And I know that my continued perseverance is encouraging to them. And some of the guys that are younger that I'm ministering to, that are 23, 24, that are like, "Man, I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so lonely." And I'm like, "Bro, I know those feelings. I know what it feels like to go home on a Friday night, a Saturday night, and a Sunday night, and the house is empty. I know those feelings."
Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us today in this interview. We know that there are some things that may have hit you in a particular place, a special place. We want to encourage you to do what Eddie did. Tell your story with folks around you, folks you can trust, folks who love you. Allow them to encourage you. You might encourage them too. The question at the end of the day is not just what's Eddie's story. What's your story?